Hello there! Welcome to the Gospel According to Now, a depiction of, Jesus' second coming here on earth, written by a real live Hebrew in the flesh. What an honor, huh? So, this that I'm about to read to you right now is a parable, okay? So, if you don't know about parables, parables are stories that Jesus told to relay concepts that actually pertain to Jesus, but he was not able to say that it was about him because he would be killed. So, in order to get his work done and not be executed too soon, he created parables to get his message across. Okay, so this is a parable that I wrote on behalf of Jesus. So, here you go. Jesus meditated on the overcoming of the dark, sinister forces which had once enslaved him. He was embodied and free. No one was holding him captive, and his mind had been transformed by the returning of his soul, renewed by his coming home to the Father's house. Here, in its place, God's kingdom was flourishing and ever expanding as the times got darker than ever. The illumination of the hidden secrets of power on earth was being increasingly exposed at its rotten foundation. Vermin scurried as the lights came on, unable to resist feasting on the scraps around them. Jesus was becoming more and more embodied within his role as king, his 33rd birthday approaching 5 months from the time he sat writing. His meditation transformed into the written expression of his understanding. The closer he got to his Father, the more present he became. In his thoughts, if his thoughts could continue to be true to his Father instead of to human experience, he would be so true that his presence would be undeniable. His maturity would take place unto another level as his 33rd year would pass. His writings were making themselves more and more frequent, the pages of a new book unfolding meticulously under the pen in his hand. His understanding was purifying by way of discernment, his involvement in his Father's plan becoming more concrete and true as the days would pass. His inevitable ascension was taking place, and he envisioned the day that a crown was placed on his head, his marriage to God's creation celebrated. After a lifetime of subhuman interaction, he met the days as they started, with his inheritance fully realizing itself. Jesus acknowledged that he had never asked for much, and knew fully that what we do ask for is minimal compared to what's to be had. He had underestimated himself and the will of his Father in such a profound way that its undeniable credibility to be renewed by his presence fully was solidified. One could deny the story of Jesus in his first coming, but they would not be able to deny his second coming. It was unfolding rapidly, yet at a steady pace, nothing to be had before or after its time. Seasons would continue to change, the cold wind blowing in the stench left by a foul, rotting system, releasing its presence into the world. The more that the Antichrist flexed his power, the clearer Jesus could see who was doing what. His trial would be credible and sturdy, well built and formulated precisely. The closer he became to the Father, the more enlightened he became about the location of the cause of that stench. Not just the physical placement, but the spiritual grounds on which the entire story unfolded. That damn dirty Antichrist had infected every institution since the fall of man, and Jesus had come home to do some deep cleaning. His purity shone so true that only those in despair could truly recognize him. Even so, many of those people doubted in their minds that it could be true. Could he really be back? Is this real? We had been fed so forcefully that the notion itself was mere lunacy, that the belief in our Father and obedience of his commands was archaic and restrictive. The reality was that true freedom was to be had at the feet of his Father. There, no one would dare to take step and move against him. They could make his body leave a place, but they could not take away his presence. They had no power over his death, and his enemies merely pushed him closer to his Father. Jesus found himself in the presence of his people and gave to them a parable he had written. Standing firm and speaking clearly, he began his story. There once was a boy who was raised without a father. An untimely demise was executed in a disordered fashion, a plot made upon his father by the time the boy reached 7 years old. The boy's own father had not been the first nor the last subject of a wicked scheme, and his death mirrored the death of so many before and after him. Unfair did not even begin to cover the vast complexity of the coup against this human man. That word described but a small truth in the grand design of the experience itself. The boy was devastated. Not only was his safety removed, but so was his best friend. The unyielding love and respect the boy had held for his father carried on even after the presence of him was gone. This continual recognition of his father's honor would place the boy in a nefarious position as a hated and envied heir to a throne. He would receive his inheritance, but not before having it stolen and then distributed by an underlying force fueled by greed and pride. The boy's mother would take everything that belonged to the boy, then set him as a servant of the house. He did whatever was asked of him, and retreated deeper into the recesses of his own mind to separate himself from a grim and encapsulated existence. Reading books became the escape route from his terrifying reality, and as he lost friends, he spent more time in literature. By the time he had reached adulthood, he had read near to 1,000 books, if not more. Still, no matter what he absorbed, becoming a man was never a subject that came up in what he was reading. Without his father to guide him, the man undertook adulthood with reckless abandon and carelessness. He was selfish, self-centered, self-absorbed, callous, cruel, nagging, and condemning. No one wanted to be anywhere near this individual, unless he was fulfilling a role somehow. His body was able and attractive, so his labor and his sexuality were used unrelentingly by those who never had enough. With no one to make proud, he became proud, looking to himself for answers on right and wrong. Without his father, the young man struggled to make sense of life's simplest requests. He could very faintly recall virtues which his father had instilled in him, but time had made them so vague that he became lost and astray without the memory of adhering to those principles. So much time had passed that he was tainted and hated that those around him could not really see him any other way. Human decency evaded him consistently despite his attempts to perform pious acts. The motivation which fueled anything he did was so watered down by ego that nothing he ever started would come to fruition fully. This truth was hidden by a false sense of self-importance, coupled with ongoing defeat and failure. The young man's mother had done nothing to foster the principles he had been taught so long ago, and continued into his adulthood to do the opposite. No matter how egregious the act or perspective, the mother consistently affirmed her son that what he was doing or saying was more than just expected. It was okay. She consistently criticized and defamed the memory of his father, making ongoing claims that the boy's father did not love him, want him, or care about him at all, that he was selfish and predatory, choosing a sinful lifestyle over his own child. Of course, it had been all lies, so eventually the truth would rear its head from the poorly structured confines of this massive plot. No words would be spoken to the boy that were so untrue as those words his mother had unleashed on him. The day he realized this fact was the day that his mother, in the dead of winter, kicked the young man out of her home, utilizing police officers to have him removed. He understood that there must be witnesses to the biblical betrayal that was taking place, and as he packed his one small bag, the son finally released the full truth of his hideous secret that he had been keeping. His mother accused him of being violent and a threat to her safety, to which the boy responded in earnest. "I am not the violent one. You are. In all these years, it was you who was hurting me, and I never retaliated against you." His voice shaking, he spoke to the officer who separated the mother from the son. "You see all those psychology books there on that bookshelf? The woman studied psychology for 20 years, and she drives a bus for a living. Pretty strange, right? And look at those books there," he said adamantly. "That foul, disgusting literature is what she taught me to read at 9 years old. Stephen King." Jesus finished rolling his sleeping bag and put his backpack onto his shoulders. "Yes, sir. Please get me out of here. This filthy hellhole. I want to leave." He exited the doorway and entered the living room, his mother hiding behind a dark curtain, one eye peeking out from behind the blanket of fabric which adorned her front doorway. "Yeah, you better hide, serpent," the young man spoke sternly, "and get a good look, because this is the last time you're going to see my face. Everything done in the dark will be brought to the light. I will reveal who put a hit on my father's head, and they will be persecuted to the fullest. You are a dragon, hoarding all this cheap trash and trinkets around you. You're going to rot in all of your possessions." He opened the door and left the house, standing outside with the officers, speaking to them openly about what he had learned and what he had experienced in his mother's house, which had been paid for by his father's blood. From that day forth, the man would remain resolute in his mission to reveal the truth and pursue justice for his fallen father. And scene. Good stuff, right? Talk about it for a minute. Where does all this come from? This crazy little imagination of mine. Anyway, I'm full of it today. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me. I hope that you enjoyed that parable. I've got more parables. So far, I've got the first 13 chapters going, so we're just going to really get there, We're really going to just get this done. I hope everyone has a wonderful, blessed, beautiful day. Don't forget to thank your father for all the cool stuff that you got. All right, I love you all so much, and I'll talk to you on the flip side. See you next time. Bye.